when we are a bit quieter in nature, we're not going to be the most bubbly person when it's at an event or anything. So think about how do you connect deeper, make a more meaningful connections with people around you.
Right, yeah, let's get straight into it. So good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Labour and welcome to today's Professional Development Forum event on quiet leadership and intellectual diversity with Lynn Morrison. So at PDF, we believe that everyone, not just the elite few, should have access to the right tools, techniques, and networks to succeed in the Australian workforce. By becoming a better version of ourselves, we can inspire those who are around us to do the same. And we do this by running events a little bit like this, as well as podcasts that aim to inform, connect, and inspire people with open and honest conversations. So before we start, just a bit of housekeeping. Please note that this will be a recorded event. So you'll be able to view this session through YouTube at a later date. Please feel welcome to update your names for us to connect with you on a more personal level and to turn your cameras on. Just make sure that you're on mute during the presentation. If you have any questions that you'd like to raise, feel free to add them into the chat box and I'll invite you to ask Lynn the question for everyone during the Q&A session at the end of each of her topics. So tonight, we're quite privileged to be joined by Lynn Morrison, the first assurance partner at EY with a mainland Chinese background. Lynn leads the EY Oceania's Chinese assurance practice, multiple cross-cultural teams, and is also a passionate advocate for female leadership, diversity, and inclusion. Today, she'll be sharing her unique perspective on leadership, the journey she made, and the learning she gained along the way. By the end of the session, we hope that you'll come out with a fresh perspective on how to lead with authenticity and with purpose, and are able to look at leadership and intellectual diversity in a new light. Actions speak louder than words, and Lynn herself is a testament to that. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Lynn Morrison to our virtual stage.
Thank you, Anthony. Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. I hope you all had your dinner. I haven't had mine, so it's okay. I thank PDF for having me to tonight's forum, but also Anthony for your facilitating and Jeffrey for your reaching out post my interview with Megumi, who authored the book called Quietly Powerful. I think that's how I got connected with PDF and have the opportunity to speak to all of you tonight. I hope tonight's session is interactive. I know Anthony said presentation, but for me, it's more of talk through, what quiet leadership means to me, and also touch a little bit on the intellectual diversity, which is connected to this topic as well. So I do hope that's an interactive session that we can just virtually speak to each other, but also find something useful for you, so that was the time that you're having now with us. Meanwhile, I also hope that through the questions you ask or the comments you make, there will be some learning for myself as well. As part of the thing I'm going to share with you is really that continuous learning that make us a better self throughout our life and journey. So on the topic of quiet leadership, in particular, I think Anthony and I, when we chatted before about our audience today with diverse background, most of you, is really around in the Australian, the corporate environment, how do we stand out and to shine? And in particular, when we have more of introvert or the quieter nature, how do we get there through the corporate ladder? So that's I'm not an academic by any means. So what I will do is I'll touch the quiet leadership through my life journey to date and how I reflected on the learnings and lessons that I had through this journey. And please feel free to jump in anytime, unmute yourself through the chat, because as I said, it's not a structured presentation, it's gonna be a chat, a talk. So I'll probably start with the upbringing. Through the professional introduction has done by Anthony already, but who I am is I'm actually China-born Chinese. I was born in quite a small village, about 2 hours drive from Shanghai on the countryside, to be honest, in the Jiangsu province. So through a family where my father is a businessman and my mom is a full-time housewife. So the upbringing is very traditional, but through my father's sort of I guess, his own business success, he always had a very high expectation on me as a daughter. And then with a very caring mother. So you can see that mix somehow worked really a bit of magic on me as a person. So I feel like I'm supported by moms, that caring, loving, and emotional support, but also there's always a pressure from father. I'm not sure if any of you would resonate with that, but that's how I grew up. And then with being the older kids in the family, I have a younger brother. My father's philosophy has always been the older kids gets, all the hard go. Because you set the example for the younger ones to follow. So that's how I was brought up as a child. And academically, need to meet father's expectation and all that. So at the end, I became the first girl actually to go to university. There are many of the friends from went to college and all that, and then the first one actually started abroad, was the University of Sydney later. So I think what I learned through that is in the upbringing that really the challenges and expectation from the one that you love and our loved ones really going to do quite a fundamental impact or influence on you as a person. I'm not sure how many of you are parents now, but I am. I think Jeff is as well. So that's where the family education, I think, that's something I take on as that learning, that challenge, that right balance of caring and pressure that certainly really helps shape a person's personality and what they'll try to achieve for their life and all that. So that's my first learning, and I try to put that learning into my parenting and my time with my two young girls at this stage in my life. So that's upbringing pace. Then after I graduated from university in China, again I came to this point of deciding, do I join a multinational as just a graduate and follow the same pattern of life, or do I challenge myself again? So I mentioned challenge a few times, self-challenge. So that was a point where through a fair bit of reading, and I found I'm curious. I'm very curious about what living abroad is about. Could I put myself into a really uncomfortable situation, such as going abroad with no life skills at that point? You probably would imagine, if any of you from, in particular, the traditional mainland China background with a mom as a full-time housewife, I had no clue about how to make a meal or cook for myself or household stuff. So that's where I decided to make that move. And I think that's really that change, that decided to live and study abroad, I think shaped me as a person, be independent and strong and conquer a lot of those little challenges in life, but actually really shaped who I am, being a very strong-minded, can problem solve, can deal with unexpected, those situations. If I recall my first month in Sydney, that was a nightmare. Like I didn't know how to cook and live on instant noodles and takeaways for a month. Then to the point that I just felt I actually can't smell the instant noodle smell anymore, to that stage. So that's where I started to really learn a lot of life skills, a lot of friendship, and through the friendship about give and take, you learn something from this person, you give away some, that's how mutually the interpersonal stuff going. I think that's really the time that I started to be more confident with myself as a grown-up. It wasn't the time I graduated in the Western world of growing up when I graduated. So the lesson learned from that was when you really step out of something you're comfortable with, then that independence, the confidence building is really beneficial for the lifetime. And that was probably one of the best decisions I made for my life at that point. And with the support from my father, I have to thank the old man's wisdom. So post 2 years, the master's study, I went back home. The comment, I still remember my mom and dad has the tears in their mind saying, feel like our daughter finally grown up. That's kind of a feeling. So learning on that is, be uncomfortable when you have the opportunity to be challenge yourself, I use a challenge again, and then just build that confidence through putting yourself into those out of your comfort zones. And I think people talk about this a lot, but that's not just about work experience and you're going to tackle something technical about your work. It's about life as well. So I think I really grew as a person at that stage. And then I returned to China. As I said, I graduated from Sydney Uni, and I worked in Shanghai as a graduate. At that time, I worked extremely hard as all the other graduates, joined a global company in Shanghai. All I found is the hard working, the learning. I started have that sense of I'm a working machine in a way, and what is my career goal? What is my life goal? And after 3 years, I started really rethink about that. I want that clarity that I didn't have. I just work harder because that pace just to push you through those 3 years. So I think in the middle of the fourth year, the 3.5 years later, and I decided to return to Australia on the basis that all about work and promotion, about pay rise or overtime pay is not what I'm after. What I'm after is a more balanced aspect of life. And obviously I still want to pursue the career, but that just feel like I can't get myself out of it. I think there's intangible forces that's pushing me through of that hard working. I feel like I need to get away from there. So I made the decision to return to Australia again in late 2005. And so that was that learning. What I found is work not going to just make me happy. I have other meanings to pursue in life. I think that still remains valid as of today. As a partner of EY, as a mother of 2 young children, and supporting husband's career, I think that's that purpose, that clarification of what I would like to achieve, really helped me shape a few decisions I made later on. On those critical points of life and career. So I returned to Sydney and then joined KPMG, another Big Four, current firm's competitor, put it that way. And now worked in KPMG until I had my second daughter in 2015. Through this time, I would say that's really high growth, hardworking, obviously, but having a lot of fun as a young person, in life, with a lot of friendship, a lot of, good sponsors or mentorship to me. And I really grew as a professional. I said, when I lived in Sydney and started abroad, I grew as a person because I'm more independent, more mature. But I think those 11 years with KPMG in Sydney really made me a very mature professional. The reason I say that is I started to learn about, other than just good at what I do technically, I also learned what I'm really good at or what I'm unique about as a professional within the firm, and how do I position myself, and then what are my shortcomings, what are my strengths, how do I deal with all that, and put all those pieces together. So the critical turning point would be in sort of early 2010, 11. We start to see the Chinese investment into Australia as an inbound investment start to really take off. And then as a manager or assistant manager at the time, I get invited to attend a lot of meetings that you wouldn't see a manager to attend, such as a big transaction that's happening, a cross-border acquisition, for example. Our local partners, they feel they can talk technical stuff, but they can't connect with the client really well to lead the deal. They can't speak the language or the culture, obviously. Also, they can't get the subtleness of a lot of messaging, and so that we can provide that premium, professional service with a lot of the expertise and the quality into it. So I get to attend a lot of those critical meetings, and through that I found, actually, this is my position. This is the value I bring. Not just technically strong at what I do, but also be strategic about what I'm better at. That's really a sweet spot for me, and I should leverage that. And then the learning is really start thinking from a value perspective. What is my value to the firm at the time? And what is my differentiation point against my peer group, what I'm good at, what are the weaknesses I need to address. So I did a lot of interesting things. I found as I progress more and more senior in the organization, my writing, obviously business writing to say a committee or board report, start to really show as a weakness. Like my written report getting changed many times by my boss, my partners, and I obviously, as a very proud person, even though not as outspoken, but I'm very proud of what I do, I often found that frustration. So I decided to put myself into a situation of, other than calling my parents and relatives back in China, I've been reading all books that say English, for example, long books. I've been only listening to the Western news. I'm not going to listen to the very happy, the TV episodes and stuff from my home language, the mother language, right, mother tongue. So I started to do a lot of those things in those years to really build up, try to address the weakness I have. But also meanwhile, and I've found it's really effective. It's because I've already have the strengths of getting the culture, language, and reading the tones, and dealing with all the subtleness already. But now I'm really enhancing the skills that make myself more comparable to my local peers. So all that self-positioning, that grows, development of addressing the weakness, and also be strategic about what I'm good at and what are the opportunity I'll put my hand up for. And that was the point where, when I moved on to the maternity leave with my second child, I got promised a promotion basically before I took maternity leave. So that's where the leadership team knows we want to keep you, and I know I'm in safe hands. I'm going to continue to be involved in those really fun, amazing opportunities, but also getting recognized. That sense of fulfillment is great. And another even better things happened when I was on maternity leave. The UI leadership reached out to me, said, "You are someone we wanted. The inbound investment is not going to stop. We want someone like you. We scan the market. You're the most senior person in assurance across all the firms. I want to talk to you." And that was certainly that wow moment. I was like, wow, I didn't expect that to happen. So gone through a process of very sort of intense interview process. I was offered the UI partnership role at the time, and I think it certainly won a lot of people, given the background, given there's no precedent like of people of my background sort of at the time. And through EY, I think, like to summarize that KPMG part, it's that conscious, the strategic positioning, self-positioning, strategically, find your strengths, and also growth about addressing your weakness. I think really positioned me very well when I need to go through the EY process. And since I joined EY, I would say in the last 5 years, again, being a partner in a new firm and do what I do with a lot of, there's a lot of ethic regulatory challenges. There's a lot of news about the industry, all of that. So it's certainly a very high growth pace of my role and my job. And then what I found then, a few things that I reflect on. One is, I found it's extremely hard to deal with a high demanding senior leadership role, young family, and then also very lack of family or support of the lifestyle we live here with both me and my husband from overseas. So we kind of have two busy professionals deal with two young kids. So in that setting, that's a reason, to be honest, of why it's only a partnership role that would have taken me to move across. That's put that aside. But in that setting, what was really motivating me, as I said, to a lot of people now, in particular my team, is you kind of need to put things, what you do, once you kind of reach certain sort of height, into perspectives. So my perspective on that is, I really wanted to create something that we continue to grow the business. Therefore, I can lead a practice that's growing and have the opportunity to sponsor more of people of the background, say, of ourselves to shine, to get through as well. So I found that motivation really drive me, and drive me really hard to work hard, and there's no complaint from me at all. I just found that purpose, that reason, that really just, that's inner drive, and every time when I see my people start to progress through, and that sense of feeling, even though it wasn't directly myself, um, I would say that's a priceless. That to me, it's a gold. So I think as of today, continue as a partner of UI, supporting the firm strategy, supporting in particular the people strategy. As I said, that that means a lot to me. That certainly is that purpose that's really driving me. But obviously, sort of continues to think about what else that I could do. That's every day, or everyday question that I ask myself. What else I can do better? But that's kind of a summary of my sort of life or career journey to date that I've found, while not being the majority in the leadership team, being a relatively quiet person in the leadership team, that I hold my ground, and because I know where my value sits, what's driving me, what's my purpose, how do I continue to develop, and how do I sort of support and sponsor other people to get there as well. That's really as of who I am today. So to put into a few quick bullet points for everyone to think and chat through is a few things I've learned around the leadership. One is when I was sort of back in the KPMG days, do a lot of networking, and because started getting to the grow business roles, and networking is important. People say that a lot, but now if I summarize, just to prepare for the talk tonight, I would say be a deep connector, which I touched on at the Megumi's interview as well. Is when we are a bit quieter in nature, we're not going to be the most bubbly person when it's at an event or anything. So think about, how do you connect deeper, make a more meaningful connections with people around you. It may only take you to speak to a couple of people at an event, rather than a lot of people shake hands and exchange cards and say hello, but scratch the surface of your counterpart that's doing. So to be a deep connector, I think that circle really going to bring back to you, because you really understand and make those meaningful connections. That gives the opportunity for you to identify value points. I use value points a lot because I think that's really critical of any relationship, in particular business relationship. So identify those value points. So that's the first reflection of on my quieter nature. How do I deal with with that, the networking? The second is when we meet people who's more extroverted, and it's a bit louder, I use that word, they tell a lot about themselves, right? And I don't. I'm not the person. I tell people a lot, like, except probably events like this, I need to speak, and the others. But I don't. I think I'm more in the ask that mindset. So I ask a lot of questions. So I let other people talk, and through that, again, linking to the deeper connection points, that you do understand a lot more about the person you're speaking to, or any other persons that you're speaking to. So try to see if you practice your mindset switch of, because you're quieter, you do more asking, less of the telling. I think that will do the trick, hopefully, for you. That's my trick anyway. And then at each stage, I certainly encourage more of the growth as a person, as a professional, as well. I think when people in the leadership roles, and all people, when talk more about this, tell people about their achieving things, right? Like when you tell, you always tell how great you are. But when we're quieter, I suggest when we ask, we're also actually growing a lot. So ask those growth-related questions. I think there are plenty of books out there as well from a leadership perspective, the growth mindset or things like that. But I think that's something could link into the conversations or interactions that you would have. So that's, again, my little tips of interacting with other people, that I always surprise even my colleagues about as of now, as a partner amongst them, the progress I still continue to make on myself is because of I suddenly, ask questions and I start learn and I grow. The other point I touch on is probably that purpose bits that I touched on earlier. I think there's that tedious side of our jobs and roles or life. But if we put that into perspective, into a purpose, I think that certainly make you feel more fulfilling and more driven. So that's just a quick sum up of what I sort of reflected on through my journey about my learnings myself on the quieter leadership. I think I would put the mic back to Anthony or the floor if you have any questions and any discussions we could have.
Sure thing. So if I could get Arthur to put on his mic and his camera to ask his question.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I can't read it, but maybe for your benefit, for everyone's benefit, Arthur, if you want to ask.
Okay. So Arthur's mic actually doesn't work at the moment, but the question was, how do you build deep connections in this environment where events are generally online only?
Yeah, it is tough, I have to say. It is tough. I think if I look back now, in particular larger corporates return to office, the trend of the hesitation, enjoying a little bit less of commute time, to now a lot of corporates start to encourage COVID-safe approach return to office. I think in-person connections can't really replace by online. That's my personal view. But there are certainly things we can do also to build deeper connections. I don't know what you do, but if I have a regular call with my team, including my counseling family, who are, the structure that we have, I tend to have a fair bit of gesture when I speak to them, even online. I'm certainly one of those people that once everything finished, I whole wave goodbye, as if you kind of in there. It is harder. It is harder. I'm just hoping that the future state of work is the combination of virtual and also in-person mix. That's my prediction of the new norm going forward. Because I think as a human being, like our natural instincts is we like the connections, right? We like a bit to be in front of you in person and can feel the body language, all the others that come with those in-person meetups. So it is harder. Happy to hear anyone else's view as well.
Hi, Lynn. It's Ella here. Nice to meet you. I just want to say I really like your story about how you grew up and how you came over to Australia. I really relate to that. But I have a lot in mind, so I'm just going to ask one question. Being someone that really likes being challenged, and obviously the growth that you had in early days, you had so much growth when you were young. Did you find that it was really difficult to kind of stop yourself at one point and go, okay, I'm constantly trying to progress and grow? Have you ever taken a step back and go, am I losing a vision? Am I going on the right path? Have you ever had any, what is that syndrome called? Imposter syndrome. Have you ever felt that before?
Thanks, Ella. That's a really good question. I think I left a little hint there in my story around why I decided to move back to Australia from Shanghai. So absolutely. So my career, obviously, before EY time at KPMG was tracking really well, and I think that there's a point I put so much my heart and soul and all the hours and hard work into it that the enormous pressure feel like I just need to keep going. And the other point is this is a bit of a sad story, but I think I need to mention so that you get the perspective. Is one of my friends from childhood who lives, in as I said, where I grew up, the next door, what I call her is a big sister. identified a cancer, and she passed away soon enough. And that was really a pause point for me to reflect on what life is about. I'm dating someone who is my husband at the moment. Am I giving the full speed or continue to go like this? Or do I have that pause in life and think about what's important? Why did I make the decision back in 2005? I feel that's just the work. So I think certainly, I think we all have to kind of sometimes pause ourselves for the better. If you use the words is, for you to step back a bit is actually to bounce higher the next time when you take off. So certainly, like, be mindful of those signs when you take on the pressure and the challenge to the point that could potentially break you. That's dangerous, and have a stop and think about what's more important. Have a bit of balance of adjustments, and then you'll find it's a different approach to it, and you can still get there. Just think about what your long-term goal is. And then, on the journey, you could adjust.
Thank you, Lynn. That's really good advice. Thank you.
I've actually got a question from myself. You've talked a lot about the way that you've been able to position yourself in the workforce and how you were able to get recognition for that, and in your quiet leadership style, that's how you've moved yourself to the top. Flipping the roles over, do you have any tips for people who are managing to connect and give more opportunities to their more introverted employees?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so on myself, I guess, I was lucky enough to have my direct boss, I suppose, or my counselor at the time, that recognized while I'm more quiet in my manager group or senior manager group, but he sees through and get to see what I do, what I deliver. The client I manage, the client was happy and all that. So that was, that was good that his leadership is great to sponsor me through. But I think if we are the, now having the introverted employee in our teams, we certainly can, for the employee themselves, obviously the advice will be different. But if we are the managers, I guess one is encourage them to speak up. So one thing I do in my team meetings, and I know there's different mixture, I would call out the names of the person who usually don't speak up. And they get a few rounds of practice, they'll get more comfortable about it as well. It's about practice, right? And then second is try to build, I should use that deep connection as well. Obviously, virtually is a bit challenging, but over the time, over the years, even virtually, you still can build a really good relationship with them, and then understand their strengths, understand how what's next for them, and how do you inspire them to get out of their comfort zone, as I said, out of their comfort zone, and that would really shape a person. The example I would give is before COVID, I would say everyone have such a busy life of work, projects, client network, or business contacts and all that. But through COVID, I actually had a more connection time with my people, my counseling family, actually, than any other year, because we do weekly catch-ups over Skype or Teams. We talk about their feelings. We chat about the challenges, even like a teeny things like, I work in this department because they're junior in the organization, share accommodation with other people, those things. And through more and more of those chats, I feel a few of my quiet counseling family members start to really open up, and they really have bright ideas to share when we come talk to other topics, really. Yeah. So I think that's just the encouragement to them, and those relationships you build as their leader, that really can help change that situation. One thing I really like to say is, it's not really about managing people or business. It's about how you make people feel. That would be my learning through this COVID online interaction. Is over the COVID time, I feel like I managed to make my people feel not just the authority, but also they feel safe. They feel really close to me. They feel they can come to me and approach me for times that they need a chat. And that really, like, that really make a difference, I have to say. So through the performance review circle we had last time, all my people, like they just got recognized, you know, get promoted and all that in the COVID environment. I was very pleased with that. That builds a culture as well. Just by the way, that's just a natural outcome too.
Thank you.
Hey Lynn, this is Tao. Hi. So first of all, thank you for sharing your story. I think, you know, I mean, from my end, it resonates, but it's also, I guess, it shows the drive and tenacity that you have just around your career and your journey. My question is on the same line around, you know, your strategic precision, right? So you mentioned that in your career, you find your weaknesses and work on your weaknesses. You find what differentiates you from your peers and you work on that. I guess what I wanted to understand and get some advice from you is around, like, if you have identified, let's say, you know, a number of weaknesses and a number of differentiators, how do you prioritize which ones then really work and zone in and hone in so that you turn that weakness into strength and then move on to another one?
Yeah. Yeah, excellent question. I think we all have multiple of both, right? The strengths and the weaknesses. So I guess on prioritization, we kind of need to put it into a context, what you want to achieve, what your goal is, whether it's a life goal or career goal. And then look at that goal to say, what are the strengths or skills or, you know, the experience that going to position you the best? So you know your goal, what your outcome is, right, through that learning journey. Then after you identify and clarify it on that, then you can prioritize what are the weaknesses you're going to have to address. How do you play your strengths to maximize the strength's impact? Then naturally you don't have to address all your weaknesses. Like I still have a lot of mine, but you know, you just play the best of your strengths and minimize that most detrimental weakness that could prevent you from achieving that career goal, or you know, that's how I would do it. And then after you reach that, you may have another goal, and then you think about, oh, what's most important for that one? What do I have? How do I plan the best of my you know, it's the same again. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for that.
No problems.
We have a really great question from Annie. Annie, would you like to take yourself off mute for this one?
Yeah. Hi, Lynn. So my question is around, have you ever faced a time where your colleagues sometimes unintentionally doubted your skills due to your quieter nature? And what is your approach to handle or deal with this kind of situation?
Absolutely. I think in my talk with Megumi, I did mention about the early time of the career. So when I was a new joiner of the Sydney practice, like, I'm not blaming the firm, it's a great firm. All my so the structure is, for any projects you worked on, you get a reviews as any organization would do, and then over the year you'll get aggregated review based on the individual project performance to determine your pay rise and promotion, etc. Yeah. So at the first year when I joined as a senior accountant, I get outstanding reviews of all my individual forms, but overall as a yearly performance review, I get like just meet expectation basically. So obviously there is expectation gap for myself, and because one, I'm not very known to people in the division. Second is I don't really like speak too much about myself as just being myself, and that just happened. So I was upset for a bit and just being a person. Then I realized there's a few things that I could work on, I could do. One is I was reading the process about the, you know, how do I discuss this, how I think it wasn't a very fair review, right? What is the process and protocols I need to follow when I have these concerns? So I did a bit of search on the internal process about that. Then second is I reflected on why this happened, like what's the reason because of me this happened? So not just external effect, but also your internal factors. And I figured particularly in these early days, we're talking about 2005 and 2006, being like my background is very like a minority within the organization. And then I found probably I haven't really made even little ripple in the organization. Like no one knows who I am. You know, there is myself. Like people, no matter how quiet you are, people should know you and know you are good at least. So I obviously didn't make any any impression in the division I was in. So that's my own problems. But I still continue to have a meeting schedule with my counselor at the time. I said, look, this is a form and this is this. I wasn't going as a very aggressive person, say, hey, I'm not happy you didn't recognize me. You know, I just went in to ask the question, why this is the case? Could you explain to me? What could I do to change this? Like, and then to my surprise, my performance manager was very embarrassed about the situation, saying, this shouldn't happen, you know. I think I triggered a bit of further thoughts in my department about, yeah, how do we really measure up people? And even though they're not known in those, are those consistent meetings or roundtables have some flaws in there? Like I'm sure they get a 90% right on a lot of ratings and things, but there will be situations like mine. So I was glad, that was adjusted, and I reflected on myself. And my counselor was a very great leader. He said, probably I did comment on as a more of a mature conversation, comment on, I probably should have been more active in a few of the department related matters that's relevant for my ranking. He said, yeah, that's a great idea. You should do this and this. This is opportunity. I'll put your name forward. Would you like to take a chance? Like, okay. So I asked her to give more training to say juniors, for example. And, I take a few of those things to one, change my personal brand internally, but also that's a good growth opportunity for myself as well. But also, when I just ask genuine questions, a great leader also pick up on that and adjust it for me. So that was a perfect example really for your question, Annie, if that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Just in the interest of time, I think we might have to go into the second topic, and then we can answer any final questions towards the end.
Yeah. So I know the event we titled as Acquired Leadership and Intellectual Diversity. That's certainly a topic that I'm very passionate about, the intellectual diversity. I think all of us, including myself, we heard enough of diversity, right? Like in the most recent 5 years or so, I would say, which is great. I think that's certainly the right thing to do here in Australia and globally. But I attended one of the leadership training internally, which made me think a bit more about it. And I'm very passionate about this beyond the diversity we refer to. So when we refer to diversity, we refer to a lot of, it's about a mixture of people with different social identity or professional identity. So very commonly, there's gender diversity, there's a culture, ethnic group, or the age, or all those diversity comments. But also for intellectual diversity is really about people from even the same ethnic group, say from all China. They would have views on different things very differently, and similarly from Western background, they would have views on things very differently as well. So to me, diversity is not really about those obvious things we mentioned. I know, a lot of leadership talking about quota, how do we get there and change? Obviously, from those backgrounds, you would bring different views. But I want to touch on one of the research done by Knowledge Works, which kind of made me think a lot when I attended that leadership forum, was it's referred to as 3 colors of worldviews. What that is there's 3 sort of colors. One is the guilt versus innocence. There is power versus fear, and there is honor versus shame. So I'll just touch a little bit, I'll dive a little bit on each of those so you know the difference and why I resonate with it. So when people have that view of guilt versus innocence, that just refers to people passionate about making the right choice. So they're establishing what's right and wrong. They like guidance, regulations, policies, and have the written agreement. That's the type of guilt and innocence. So it's right or wrong kind of person. The power and the feel is about passionate about maintaining that power, authority, about, you know, having the hierarchy, they tell, you know, the verbal directional communication to build the relationship, that I tell you so, you know, I tell you to do, and da. So that's the power versus feel. And the honor versus shame is really about people passionate about enhancing their honor. So the, you know, their brand name, for example, they could be quite indirect in their communication. They depend on some key relationships to leverage, to influence others. So that's kind of, you know, honor versus shame. The reason I want to mention that is I think all of us all have a mixture of all these different views, these three colors of worldviews, but just depends on which one is more dominant than others. That will really drive how we perceive things, how we think about things, how we're going to comment, how we're going to react, how we're going to behave, you know. So you could, where from the same even family background, you could have really different view, like which one is more dominating. Therefore, you would have different ideas generated in a setup and all that. So for diversity, I really hoping, you know, we're all moving beyond the obvious and start to, again, go a bit deeper into the viewpoints, what's really motivating, drive them, what's going to work better for them. How do you make them more effective in the interpersonal relationship, and how do you make them more effective, more successful in their career planning, for example. So I think having a bit of reflection on that and be able to embrace everyone from, you know, all those viewpoints, background, I think that would drive really true diversity. Because I certainly feel when we talk a lot more about gender, our, in particular, like sometimes we chat internally to joke about it, is how about the males, you know, you're gearing toward the other. And also we talk about the glass there, you talk about, you know, how about we working really hard? Why do you have, you know, you have the prioritized opportunity to rise, you know, for example. So I think that's where I'm really passionate about as well, because from these, we kind of beyond the personality trails, beyond introverts, extroverts. We look at really how we're going to bring everyone into a mix, whether it's a project, it's a corporate, it's something that we try to achieve as a common goal. It will be more inclusive in my view. Hence, diversity to me is about how we think and how we behave. It's intellectual, as Jeff rightly used the words to name the title of the event. It's about the different colors of beliefs and worldviews, as I just touched on. I need to quote one thing at the Diversity Council of Australia's comments. So they did a research with a few corporates. In their research, one of the 6 key sort of solutions, I suppose, or recommendations for breakthrough, in particular, a few ceilings, is really around recraft the leadership model. So on that, why it's diversity is on that, it basically is, there's a quote that I like to just read to you, is that recreate the leadership model that opens a lock of inherent bias towards masculine Western leadership style, where extroversion, self-promotion, and assertive direct communication are overvalued. So that ties nicely with the quiet leadership topic that we're having tonight. It's really about, it's not about those celebrated styles, it's about your viewpoints, you know, what really, who you are. That's what that really matters to me. So that's probably where I would leave for all of us to have a conversation about, is this intellectual leadership.
Right. Does anyone have any questions for Lynn regarding intellectual diversity? Any comments?
Hi, Lynn. I find that under the current time, have intellectual and honest conversations become increasingly difficult. Because sometimes, you know, you have certain facts, and facts are just facts. But presenting them demands to be a bit more careful the language you use, because a lot of people get emotional. For, say, a young person or a young professional and be like introvert, right? Do you have some advice, like, you know, the way to have an intellectual but honest conversation, say to somebody who has in a position of power or something like so?
I hope I get your question right, Washington. So as a young professional, you feel like having that diversity to speak out your points, in particular with who is senior than you, with more of power and feel, that kind of style, you feel it's harder to deal with. Is that correct?
Yeah, sometimes I feel that it is difficult.
Yeah. So I guess there's different tips, which I'm actually quite happy to. I'll try to search a link. I think it's really good for this knowledge works piece of research work that I recommend. Is for those, one is obviously there's. I hope everyone is still in their development. You know, they continuously develop themselves as being an authentic leader, and you know, to continue to grow themselves. But for each different type of leadership, leaders, that there's different styles that would work better. So if you, as a young professional, you work with someone in power, very direct, you know, have that hierarchy authority style of style, operating style, I guess you probably want to use more of an indirect way of challenge, or you know, when you refer to those, but also try to find the why behind that person's or that leadership style. Like, is that there's something that's really critical or is really worried about, he can't afford to, you know, fail that, and things like that. You know, when you find the why, as we all have the smarts to work out what would be the best approach to deal with those. So try to engage one-on-one in particular. If you find someone who is really strong and with that power kind of style, one-on-one works much better than a larger meeting or the public sort of avenue when you want to address the issues. And also, you need to work on yourself when you're young and you deal with someone with, you know, that operating style. You need to give them a reason why they need to listen to you or trust you. To me, as a younger person, like if I reflect, like you always need to ask, you know, having that reason, like you need to give them a reason. So if I use Annie's earlier question about this, not recognize the effort, the way I thought about and to approach it is, I sort of schedule a meeting to have the conversation is, I give him a very valid reason why I couldn't understand it. That reason is very obvious, like you can't fake it, right? It's very obvious. So for anything you work on, you feel you're uncomfortable, give a good reason why you need to have a conversation about it. And one-on-one would be preferred, in particular in this power versus, you know, young kind of you know, that mix. Yeah, so that's probably a few things that I would add on. Probably the other tip I would have is try to still instill a sense of control for that person you're working with. So you make them feel, yes, I'm having conversation with you, but you're not losing your control. You know, you're still having that power, because remember, they're the person passionate about maintaining their power. So you kind of need to set in their frame, but try to manage in a way that you achieve your objective of you know, getting that balance. So a lot of times communication, certainly it's a form of art, as we all know, but it's certainly a very interesting very interesting area. Hope that's helpful.
No, I definitely so. Yeah, thanks so much for the tips. Thank you.
No problems.
Thank you for your question, Washington. We have time for about another 1 or 2 more questions. Does anyone have any questions? Please let us know.
I just want to quickly jump in. I've just posted a link to a feedback form, so please tell us what you think of the event tonight. Really love to hear from you, and please give us some feedback.
Okay, if there's no further questions, well, on behalf of the Professional Development Forum, I'd like to thank Lynn for sharing both her time and her wisdom with us this evening. One of the highlights was definitely the Knowledge Works post. So Jess actually posted that in the chat for anybody who's curious to take a look into it. Really interesting article to take a look at. To all the attendees, thank you so much for your attendance. Our next event will be on executive presence for diverse young professionals on February 18th. Feel free to stay back to connect with everybody here on the chat, or even connect with us on Facebook and LinkedIn. We run sessions like these quite regularly, and if you'd like to know about upcoming events or how to even join PDF, please feel free to reach out to us for more information.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me again.